Warning: the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi everyone, it's The Journey, and today's journey is featuring a resilient survivor and inspirational author who has overcome numerous life-altering changes, just like me per se, because this guest has been a victim of childhood sexual abuse and bullying, the loss of his mother at an early age, and the eventual estrangement from his father, his battle with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and the loss of his youngest son to suicide. But despite enduring multiple surgeries, grueling chemotherapy treatments, and the tragic loss of his youngest son, our guest has demonstrated remarkable strength and perseverance. Through his experiences, he's developed a unique perspective on resilience and the power of his 15 core beliefs, and which we will go through today, which we'll hopefully dissect in such a way that it's easy for you to understand. But our guest currently lives with his wife and remains actively engaged in the lives of his three remaining adult children as he continues to support his family while managing his own health challenges. His book, which we'll also will talk about, Overcoming Life's Toughest Setbacks, which will be the name of the podcast, shares the principles that have helped our guest navigate life's darkest moments, offering hope and guidance to others facing adversity undefined. I welcome Andy Campbell to The Journey.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, have a conversation.
You're welcome. And as I always say to guests, you can be open, as honest as you want to discuss what you want. If you feel like it's going to be a trigger warning, just try and remember to say trigger warning or to say this may upset people, but
We should probably just say that at the beginning of this because there's
which
a
I
lot,
genuinely do. That's why I'm highlighting it now. It's a context of how we are talking about subjects, and you heard in the bio, there are subjects that may upset. If you are easily upset, we do apologize, but this is just a reference point to help others. And if
Yeah.
you do feel affected, there is helplines, and wherever you are in the world, just Google or even look on your phone or ask a friend to be there for you, because there is help out there for you. And I will illustrate that. There is definitely help out there for you.
There is. And please take advantage of it, right?
Yes.
Please take advantage of it because I think that's, I guess kind of to begin with an end in mind, David. My story is about doing the things you have to do so you don't quit, right? To last long enough to have a better life.
Yeah.
And I think you've got some of those experiences. I think a lot more people than they know, like an individual knows a lot of people, and they think maybe all those people have their lives together or they haven't experienced hardships or setbacks. And I think that's just because they don't know them as well as they think they do, right? I don't know of anybody in this world who hasn't had difficult circumstances and setbacks. Whether it's childhood sexual abuse, whether it's losing someone or multiple people that you dearly love, whether it's, losing relationships, it's a health issue. Like for me, it was a stage 4 pancreatic cancer diagnosis, or, losing someone to, the first people I refer to are more natural causes, right? But then there's unnatural causes like suicide. And, I happen to have a number of those experiences, but any one of those is enough to cause you to have challenges in life. And so my story is really about, look, no matter how bad you think it is right now, If you're listening to this and you are and you're concerned, or you know that you're an addict, or you are having suicidal ideations, or you're just have lost hope and you're not sure that you can keep going forward, you don't have a, you don't feel like you have a reason to go forward. I hope my story will, in some way, in some small way, convince you that those feelings are not true, that you do have a reason for going forward, that you can get back on track, and that you can actually live a better life than what you think you can right now.
Yeah, and it's about being able to face those problems without wearing the, and I always use this in the context of how I do it, it's about wearing that virtual mask. It's not about wearing that virtual mask. It's about still being able to be you, to shine through, to show your resilience.
I think that's true. It's you're not going to have, every day is not going to be a great day. I
Mm,
mean, I have a lot of not great days, and um, but I think it is super important to be transparent with yourself about where you are, and take advantage of every resource you can get your hands on to put yourself mentally and physically in a place that keeps you in the game long enough for things to work out, long enough for things to work out better. So a lot of what I talk to people about, David, is between the time that traumatic event, that thing that happened to you, and the time that you are able to be transparent and confront it and deal with the pain and kind of overcome that. In between, you got to survive until
mm,
you get to that place. And to me, that's, yes, the confronting of things. I've been through all kinds of different types of therapy. I've done everything from uh, talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, which I think stands for eye movement desensitization something. I don't know what the R. I can't remember what the R is, but um, which is a really intense, uh, kind of therapy to deal with traumatic events,
mm,
traumatic memories, and what they leave behind that can cause you a lot of life challenges, right? Just the way you look at yourself,
mm,
and the way you look at yourself, the way you look at the world, the way you interact with others. Even down to, recently I did started doing some sessions on this technique called the emotion code, about, releasing trapped emotions, right? So EMDR was about how to think about things differently without having an like this visceral emotional reaction. And then I think the emotion code is about, okay, now that you can think more clearly about things, let's work on releasing the emotions that might be causing your less than optimal behavior, right?
mm.
Uh, because that's what happened to me. I mean, you start out as a child, and you're sexually molested, you're raped, and that goes on for a period of time. And children don't have the ability to offer consent, right? So,
No,
that's it breaks a lot of things. There's no way it doesn't break a lot of things inside.
because obviously a
And
child being vulnerable and young and naive, they don't understand unless you raise them in such a way. And it's about the balance of, making them feel safe, but at the same time, how can you make them feel safe when they're exploring stuff and everything's new to them? As you get
yeah,
older, yes, you are, but when you're younger, you can't step back and say, you can't teach a kid from a young age to say no.
yeah. It's and in a lot of ways, that's kind of how people was groomed, that's what happened to me. You were just kind of groomed into it. You didn't know. You were trusting, you were open, you do all these things. And so one of the things that's left behind, or a series of things that's left behind by those events, are you start closing off, you become distrustful, you see the world as a really risky, bad place.
Mm,
Um, and in a lot of ways, it is a risky, bad place, but that doesn't mean you have to live that way.
no.
And then that can lead to using substances to kind of make you feel better or lessen the pain or,
A
just deal
way,
with day to day.
a way of blocking out the bad, even by adding more bad. But adding bad is just the fact of making it a more compressed to push it down to suppress.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think eventually all that suppression landed in my pancreas, right? So it goes someplace. If it's not going out, if you're not dealing with it and getting rid of it, it goes somewhere,
But the
and
way I look at it, and it's not me judging in any way, it was not that caused the pancreatic cancer. It was just a case of bad luck. But if you want to assume it's the bad that's happened to you, you can say, yeah, it is the build up, and it's just its way of punishing me. But it's not a punishment.
no, 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 it's not. I don't think it's a punishment
That's
at
what
all.
some people who bottle it for so
Oh,
long.
yeah, no, I definitely don't want to leave that impression. That is absolutely not the case. I think what happens is, um, look, rule number one out of my 15 core beliefs is no one outruns the universe. And I think what happens is we're designed to be able to first not have those experiences, but if you have them, to deal with them so that you can lessen or remove the pain. But to your point, when you stuff those things down, I happen to have my mother and three of her four sisters died from breast cancer. Uh, three of the, let's see, three of them in the, three of the five girls died in their 50s from breast cancer. And so one lived longer, but her mother, my grandmother on her side had breast cancer. And so I think what happened was I have this, genetic variant. And I think what happens is if you don't deal with things and you do stuff them down, it's not a punishment in any way, shape, or form, but by
No,
holding on to that, where you have a weakness, I think all of that stuff will find a way to, kind of come
exploit it,
out.
exploit it.
It'll exploit the weakness. So the better, if I had it all to do over again, the better thing to do is I would confront this and deal with it to get that stuff out,
Mm.
in some way, shape, or form, because I didn't until I probably started, you know, dealing with like a therapist when I was, I don't know, probably 20 years ago. My wife and I have been married 37 years, and you hit these rocky spots, and will it continue? Will it not continue? And she wanted us to go to a therapist, a marriage counselor, and I did, and that was really my first exposure to going. And there were some things in there. Then it became where we started going separately, and it started my journey then. Oh, fits in. It kind of started the journey then, um, toward what really started to pick up pace after my son's passing from suicide. Because the grief for everyone, my wife, myself, my children, his siblings, that becomes so overwhelming that all of your control, just like you lose the strength to control everything, like to control your own emotions and things. And that's when I was like, man, I don't want to live like this anymore. I realized that what happened, Dave, was I realized that while I had been surviving through these things, I hadn't really been, I don't know that I'd really been living. I'd survived them, but I wasn't happy. And I didn't know that. I thought I was happy. But then as I started going through some more intensive programs to deal with the stuff, that's when I kind of realized, like, damn, I'm starting to feel happier, like happy. Like it was like I remember my wife, somebody asked it, like some therapy, like one program, so we were doing, and they said, I want you to describe a happy memory from your childhood. It's important that you get this happy memory and that you visualize
Mm.
this happy memory from your childhood. And I couldn't think of one. I mean, I really struggled and tried, but I couldn't think of one. And of course, my wife was just like rattling them off, and she's had a really difficult life, but she rattled them off. And I was like, damn, did I really not have any happy memories, or can I just not like have I kind of, in an effort to block out the bad stuff, have I blocked out everything?
Mm.
And that's kind of what I learned later. I blocked out everything, because then, so I would just encourage people to, don't try to outrun the universe.
Because
And
the universe does catch up with you.
it's kind of designed to help us, like it's trying to help us be a better human and to kind of fulfill, in my view, kind of fulfill our purpose, right? Like work through our things and accomplish something. And what you're designed to accomplish doesn't have to be, the wealthiest person in the world, some great politician or orator. It can just be, you know, raising another generation of decent people,
Yeah.
like, I mean, and that's not just like that's super important. And so there's reasons for us to, kind of get our shit together and
Mm.
focus on that. And if you're thinking about if you're having a suicidal ideation, David, and I don't mean David, you're having one. I'm saying for people who may be having one or have them, I just this may not make sense. It may not make any difference, but I'm hopeful that for at least one person, this will make a difference. Please remember that if you take your life, when you leave, your pain will not go with you. You will leave, but the pain will stay,
Yeah.
and it will spread like a cancer to people who loved you, to everyone who knows you. And what you won't realize later is that it will spread to people you don't know because they'll hear the story, they'll hear about it. And then that pain becomes kind of generational. Like
Mm.
it moves on generationally, it just keeps going. And so, my encouragement to someone having suicidal ideations is stay here, do the hard work of being transparent with yourself and working to lessen that pain and remove that pain so that what you pass forward through the generations from anyone who meets you, because any connection you have, someone you meet at the gas station, somebody you meet at the grocery store, a loved one, a distant family member, you are passing on a legacy to those people. You are passing on a generational thing. And so
Mm.
anytime you overcome something, you are pushing the ability to persist and persevere into the future, right?
Yeah.
So you get to pick which one. I just hope you pick to stay, um, and pass forward to other generations. Because I think that's kind of some of what we find ourselves with so many suicides today is that it's been passed forward, like it's
Yeah.
been passed forward.
And
So anyway, I'll get off that topic, but I think it's important. Don't quit.
it's a knock-on effect. That's how I perceive it. Because
Yes.
if something happens to one person and then the other person sees it, it goes on to them. It's the knock-on effect, domino effect, as I call it.
Yes, 100%, right? Like,
Mm.
all those things that people observe, the cliches, it turns out those things hang around because they're probably pretty accurate,
Mm.
and like that idea of like a knock on for just, like observing and then following, like it happens, I mean,
And
and
the ethos of the podcast, what I started off as was share a wise word or two, but then recently I've started using the key vowels A-E-I-O-U. So I say you amuse, you educate, you inspire, you observe, and you understand.
yeah, yeah, I think that's wonderful, man. I think that's because it's,
Because you do want to make people feel amused, you do want to educate people, you do want to inspire, you do want to observe how people are around you, and most importantly, you do want to understand.
I think that, a lot of what you're describing is the way I refer to it as having insatiable curiosity. I actually think being curious is like it affects your positive mindset.
Mm.
Like if you're not curious about things, let me put it a different way. If you're really curious about things, your mind stays occupied with learning new things. It stays occupied like in our conversation, right? It's like if I'm curious about you, I can't really think about me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of focused on learning about you and knowing more about you to your point, like understanding.
Mm.
And I do think that that drives a much more positive view, and it drives better relationships. Like
Yeah. And it's a
yeah,
good way of forming a good network as well. If you get to know the individual, like we spoke before we started recording, you got to know about me. So you know about me. I
yes.
got to know about you. When I come on recording, yes, you know about me already. Or if you've done research, you can look me up in the fans to say, oh, David's this, David's that, or Andy's this, Andy's that. Now, I've got your bio, I take it, but I don't per se use it. Like I told you before I started recording, I look at the bio, I don't think automatically I know that person.
Right.
I
Well,
interviewed, and you heard me saying about me interviewing, and I will use this reference, Clarissa Burt. I didn't know who
yeah.
Clarissa Burt was. She said, I want to be part of your podcast and share my journey, which she did. She explained about being an actress on the film Never Ending Story 2. It's like, uh, and and then I doubled back on myself afterwards and I looked at it, and yeah, she was the actress from Never Ending Story 2, but you don't associate that when you first see the name. And if it doesn't say in the bio, how are you supposed to know?
Well, but also, yeah, I mean, also though that her as being in a movie or movies is not really who she is. Like you
No.
got to know who she was by
Mm,
having the conversation with you. So you know probably a lot, well, you do know a lot more about her, and your listeners know a lot more about her than just anybody who went to see her and saw her in a movie. They know
mm,
nothing about her, right? And I
yeah.
think, I think I think we have a lot less conflict in the world if we spent a lot more time talking to other people, understanding them, being insatiably curious about them and a lot of topics. Because I think people get hung up on like the thing they see on social media, whether it's good or bad,
Mm,
or they get an impression in their mind of somebody, and then they stop being inquisitive.
yeah.
And then I think you just lose an understanding. And then people just become eventually I think they just become angry, you know, and
Mm,
that's not a good thing.
true. And, the way I look at it, I'm not saying it for every single individual who are famous, but you look at those people, they are still the same person as me and you. They just
Hmm.
got a glorified title to their name, or they got a blue check mark next to their name.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I
I mean,
now
that's,
I now I admit I've had a blue check mark only on the principle of me just trying it out. Now I don't want to pursue having a check mark because it's about, and this is a thing I learned over the years, it's not about look at me, I'm David Hackett. It's not about wearing that badge.
yeah.
I've worn that
Yeah.
badge. I've said I've worn that badge. People have recognized I've worn that badge, and it's like, why are you being that way when you can just be David as David?
Look, I think, well, I think that goes to what we're talking about though, right? Like
Mm,
if somebody could just make a judgment one way or the other, but they don't know your thinking or like what your thought process was or why you would do what you do. So I just think, that kind of takes you to one of the other things. One of the other beliefs is uh, be religious only about religion. Like because I think it's really hard to be insatiably curious, whether it's a topic about medicine, life, people, your circumstance, how to get through your circumstance, if you've already made decisions about everything. If you, I mean, I'm a Christian and I have a religious dogma. And I like to think I'm reasonably close to that dogma. But that doesn't mean that that's how I need to bring that same kind of, structure to my personal relationships,
no,
to the things I do in life, right? Like they're not the same thing. I mean, why argue with my wife or your partner or significant other over something that's just not that important? And I think some of it is people start to try to they apply like this religious dogma to everything, everything. And
mm,
then people shut down and they don't talk and they don't come to understandings and agreements. And yeah, I think people get very set in their ways. And once they get set in their ways, it's really difficult to become curious.
yeah,
Because if you're curious, it could break, if everything is religion, then you can't really have curiosity because it would break your religion. And that's whether it's your politics, whether it's your relationships with people, whether it's, how you drive to the grocery store,
mm,
which route you take. Like,
yeah,
I mean, it's just really easy to once you start putting that kind of weight on these other things, then I don't know how you can remain curious because you've locked into a religious position,
Mm.
right?
And then it's about people, putting that label on you in such a way that you looking at it one-sided. You don't see beyond the either side. It's always
Right.
a one track.
Yeah, I could not agree more. So I think, and so I think people, people go through these challenges in different ways. Some people to get through them, they have to become very structured, right? They have to become very structured. And structured in how you deal with, uh, you know, say sobriety, is probably if you took that same kind of structure and regimen and applied it to, other parts of your life, it might not work as well. So, I mean, I know for me it didn't, right? I mean, the way I would do things, I basically tried to run my personal relationships the way I would run my business relationships. And it turns out that's a really bad way to do it.
Yeah, because it's
Like it's
not
super
because
bad to do it that way, because people aren't businesses and they're not, workers and they're not your peers or your boss or somebody who works for you or reports to you. Like it's relationships are completely different. And if, for me, I knew one way to have them. Like that's the structure I had to have to mentally kind of get through things. And
mm,
then I learned that that wasn't actually a good way to do things.
yeah,
And so,
and how can you be truly yourself if you feel like you are, like I said, the one track mind? If you're in a relationship, it's not about numbers unless you're calculating something about a vacation you want to go on, but it's not
right,
about pictorial. It's
right.
like, I'm not trying to say that harshly against relationships because some people do find that happy, but I just feel like if you're controlled in such a way, how can you be truly yourself?
Yeah, well, I think it's certainly,
Like a classic example, a person is with a person, the other person says, I don't want you to be heavy, or I don't want you to be this weight. Isn't it up to the individual, not the other person, to tell them what is why? It's like, for example, I like someone, I like them for who they are. I don't tell them to dress up in pink, for example, because I think
yeah,
pink will suit them. It's up to
yeah,
them to say, oh, I like pink. What do you think?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think when you've been, so when you've been through really traumatic circumstances or circumstances that have traumatized you, they have caused your brain to react to these circumstances in a way that allows you to survive them, but is not really a great way to process them or live happily with, continue on with a happy life, even though those things have happened to you.
Mm,
I think one of the and I've struggled with this myself, and I didn't know I was doing it, but it's you're just in a lot of ways working to protect yourself from bad things happening, and one of the ways you do that is you control the situation
mm,
to keep bad things from happening. But just like we were talking before, like there's a trade-off. It's very possible that what you're doing is making bad things happen by working so hard
mm,
to prevent bad things from happening. You're actually you did avoid those bad things. You just got a lot worse things. It's like con- yeah, I think it makes sense to me why people become controlling. Like I can understand. I don't think that in any way that justifies it because I think ultimately the person who is controlling of another person, at least in my personal experience, what I found was in the near term, it helped me avoid pain and problems. But in the long term, it made a lot more worse
yeah.
than the good it did.
Mm.
Right. But I get why it happens
More
because you've had
damaging.
bad things happen to you and
Yeah,
and you don't want those bad things to happen again.
yeah. And the fact of the matter is, when you get used to it, you always assume it is the normal when it
A
isn't
hundred
the
percent.
normal.
Yeah. Well, it becomes
Like
normal for that person. I'm like,
like
for
I,
me,
s-
that was just so normal. I didn't know any different.
like I
Like I'm
said
like,
about
I'm
the,
not controlling.
like I said about the example about the weight. Someone gets used to, you know, being the way they are. They get told they are big or I don't want you big. And when they feel like, oh, big, I'm big, I'm big, and then it transpires later down the life, I'm always like this. And and no matter how much you try and tell that person, even though it's a good thing, that person won't listen because they got it so ingrained in their mind that I'm so used to being told I'm this, I'm told that.
Well, look, and I think again, you're absolutely correct, and I think that's why um, therapy types like EMDR are super helpful because it deals with exactly what you're talking about. Like when we get our responses to things, and just the conversation, hearing those negative things about yourself, those words are processed and they go down a neural pathway, and you have a reaction to those things. Even if in the beginning it's a small reaction, you have a reaction. And then every time you hear that or something like that, your brain processes it through that same kind of pathway. And, you know, what happens is you don't even know that that's what you're doing,
Mm,
right? And so you need to go through, one needs to probably find a way to change that pathway so that it's not so that you have a different view of the circumstances. And for myself, when that happened, that's when I started to come to terms with, I wasn't like super controlling. I wasn't tracking my wife down to find out, like, where were you 15 minutes ago? Where are you 15 minutes from now? Where are you going to be? Like that, like that. But there was a lot of things in my life where I would certainly do all I could to prevent pain, right?
mm,
To try to stop those things from happening. So it wasn't like, my wife never left the house. My wife, my children didn't do it. It was just trying to control pain and or stop pain. And what I realized was I didn't even, like you said, it becomes so ingrained you don't realize you're doing it. Like my wife would say, like, you're just like you're being a little too controlling. And I'm like, controlling? I'm not controlling. And then I went through this thing and I was like, oh shit, I know what she means now. Like, yeah, I'm not doing the things like you see in the movie of somebody who's controlling, but
mm,
I wasn't really living in like a state of acceptance. I wasn't just accepting things for the way they are. And, like you want people to change, like what you were talking about before, you want them to change so you don't get hurt. Like if you don't do this, if you change, then I wouldn't get hurt.
yeah.
And so at some point, you got to come to a place where you're like, you know what? You be you, and I'll just decide not to get hurt. How about that? Like you being you is not really going to hurt me. I'm not 7 years old being sexually abused. I'm not, 11 finding out my mother's going to die from cancer. I'm not, like all those things, but like you get older and for me, it was still processing things the same way that I did back then, but I was 40 years older than I was then.
Mm.
So
So, do you feel like your journey, despite the downs and many ways of that's happened in your life, do you feel your journey has progressed in such a way that you can feel like you've made the impact now where you can say, I'm better than then and I feel better now for being here?
yes, I do. And I think that's, um, you and I spoke earlier. I think a lot of the things that if someone read my core beliefs, I think they are adaptable to the situation that someone's in. And when I wrote them down and when I put them in a book, which I never intended to do, that was just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of happened. It wasn't like I wanted to do it or started out with intent to do it. But I hope what they find is that are some techniques, some types of mindset that they can apply. Where I really see them working is between the event that has left you scarred or damaged and the time where you start being transparent and start really making progress on becoming the kind of person that you really are capable of being, right? Like in that middle ground, a lot of people just quit.
Mm.
because it's like it's got quicksand or it's like a bog and it's hard to walk through and it takes so much energy and effort to get through it. Some people just quit, they get stuck, they become angry, they don't want to go forward. And so, yeah, I want to I want to be someone that is imperfect, still does things on a regular basis that don't live up to my core beliefs. They're kind of aspirational, like it's not like a sermon, it's like aspirational. Like they're just up to
Yeah.
like you're striving to do those things. Like I strive to look at a problem, a challenge, and I strive to remind myself that inside this problem is something I can take away from it. Like there's got to be some thing in there that is useful. It's not the reason the problem happened, but like the reason I say it's like every challenge has a chewy nugget center made of opportunity is because I don't like the saying every cloud has a silver lining. And the reason I don't like it is because the silver lining's on the outside. Like I could just get to the silver lining before I ever got to the dark cloud.
Mm.
And then like why would I ever go into the dark cloud? I would just get to the silver lining and then move on to the next dark cloud with a silver lining. But the way I think of it is that you go through these things anyway. We just live in a world where bad shit happens. So you're going to go through this stuff.
Yeah. And
And
I'm gonna make sure the core beliefs are in added at the end before the end credits so people can, if you're watching, can see it, and it will be as an audio as well, so you will be able to hear them. So I'll
yeah,
get
just, I mean, but, I want to be, I have come to a place where I just want to be an encouragement to people, not a know-it-all, not dogmatic about it, not, but, somebody who can be empathetic and say, look, you and I are different, but if you're hurting and you're in pain, I think I can relate to that,
mm,
right? And in relating to that, I'll listen to you, but I want you to know that this is not the end. Okay. Like this is not, you don't have to stay here and you don't have to live your life like this. You know, you can persevere to get to a place where you're in a better state of mind and a better life. I
yeah,
just I want people to be encouraged.
okay. And it is about encouragement, and I believe in encouragement because I've been in a dark place many times myself in the past, and I've always been told it's not about this, it's about this being, positive. But
Yeah.
it's about being positive and about maintaining that positive self. And I have, luckily, in the last couple of years, maintained that happy self and been in that happy place.
But it's not easy though, is it, David? Like
No,
it's not easy to say, like
it's
people like you need to be positive and it's like, well, how? How much? And they're like, well, just be positive. And it's
mm,
like, well,
it's
that's
like
really hard to do.
it's like I'm not trying to compare myself in what I do for my day job because I don't want to be seen as being ungrateful because it's a job. But how can you be happy doing something that you feel like it's the norm? Because what I
Hmm.
do for my day job, it was like grained into me when I first came to America. This is a good job, it's a good, safe, reliable job. You'd be used to it. It'd be good for you. It was taken away from what I truly wanted. Yes, fine, I couldn't do automatically what I wanted to do when I came to America, which is what I'm doing now, podcasts. I couldn't
Yeah.
automatically do what I wanted to do part of the radio. I'm not part of the radio now, but I'm doing podcasts. I'm doing something that I'm happy with, but in my day job, I'm still ingrained in believing what I'm doing is the safe and reliable job. Now, that's not me condoning my job because it's a job.
Right.
But if I could be doing something better, I wish I could be doing that.
And but David, to me, the important thing is that you're continuing while you're doing one thing that's kind of the normie thing to do. It's like the normal, like you may not feel like there's some great calling in it or like you're like it's making a the kind of difference that you get, the enjoyment, the energy that you get from doing the podcast, but you're kind of demonstrating to other people that you can do both until you can do the one that you really like. Don't give up on the one you really should be doing, the
Mm,
podcast, but you may have to do these other things along the way, and don't not do the thing that you are drawn to, just because for a period of time to do that, you have to do this other thing that's not what you're drawn to.
Yeah,
Like that's perseverance. I think that's kind of a testament to persevering and just kind of being determined to do what you know and what's obvious is a calling for you, while you have to do this other stuff to pay the bills that allows you to do this thing that you're kind of called to do. And I think that's a great example to people, because sometimes people are like, they get down because they can't do this thing that they really want to do, this thing that they feel called to. And it's what you've done is you've shown an example that, well, until you can only do one, you can in fact do both. Like
yeah.
you can do it, and you
And I
can be
and
determined to do
and
it.
I do still have time for outside those two, things that I do still have time to do what I want to do.
Right,
Now, that
right.
fine, if I get a weekend that I've got six, seven interviews, it can be difficult because usually it's blocks and they are blocked in so much it looks like I've got a busy day. But I try and make it so if it is a busy day, I will say, okay, let's keep it brief or keep it half an hour, and I'm keeping the other time. Now I got the time in front of me now. I'm not worried because today is a kind of relaxed day and it's only just me and you talking. I haven't got anything
Yeah,
else scheduled. But
yeah,
after this interview, I might edit it, I might put it up straight away. But if I don't, it's nothing against you, but you will understand that David will get
sure.
to it.
Right, right. Look, I think that's, yeah. And that, like, and you can't be so worried about what everybody else thinks that you do cut out everything enjoyable in your life.
Mm,
Right? Like
very
if
true.
if you've got an enjoyable thing to do this afternoon, no, you shouldn't sit around and edit this podcast so it would get out because Andy won't understand, or for whatever reason, right? It's like you got some enjoyment. That's one of the things that I don't think we do enough of. My son, my oldest son, is a is kind of like I guess they call him like an overlander. Like he travels and does, like Instagram stuff and uh, does product reviews, that kind of thing. And his motto is out there, right? You got to go out there.
Mm.
And his belief is that, like you got to get away from things and kind of get out in nature, go do something enjoyable that's not man-made. Like you got to go put your feet on terra firma, without some shoes on. Like you got to go feel the earth.
Or go in the
And so,
river, or go in the river as I always liked doing when I was growing up, going to the river with no shoes and socks on, just being in the sensation of water on your feet.
I mean, the energy that flows through that water is now flowing through you, right? Like
Exactly.
it's wonderful for us.
And
And
it,
I
and it's
think
and it's pure.
it's pure, yeah, and I just think people don't do that enough. Like we get so heads down, and then we get kind of depressed, and then we don't feel like going and doing anything. But man, just a 10-minute walk barefoot on the grass, or out in the sunshine, or just sitting someplace watching a bird and listening to it chirp and sing, and watching a squirrel bounce around from tree to tree. Um, that like resets your soul in a lot of ways,
Mm.
and I don't think we give, like, we're looking for this big, big thing. And then we got all these little things around us that can help us reset, like help give us enough energy to get through another day. And I think we have to take that, like we got to take those opportunities. So yeah, man, don't edit this damn thing. Go do something,
Brush the
like,
shit, as the saying goes, brush the shit away.
right, right, exactly, exactly. Because it's going to come back on you tomorrow, the next day, like you got to take a few minutes to go,
And that's the thing,
go take care of yourself.
and that's the thing, people do those things just to forget about moments that are bad. It doesn't mean it's gone altogether, but if you do take that time, it helps you feel better for that next day.
Yeah, look, I read a book. Well, I listened to a book because when I walk, I like to like listen to audio versions of books. And there's a book called Your Brain at Work. I can't remember the author's name, but I mean you can find it Amazon, Audible, but it's more like he does like this physiological run through. He uses like business, like you're at work. uh, as an example, as a means to tell a story, like to showing examples. But it's really like this physiological thing about how your brain actually works. And like he's a big proponent because he would say he's a proponent because that's physically how your brain works, right? But those little breaks when you do that actually are really important for there's like a part of your brain that will kind of turn off when it gets focused on something else, something enjoyable, or just like nature, that actually disengages you trying to solve a problem or think about something, and it allows a different part of your brain to work on that while you're just like doing something different. And so his whole thing is that we're kind of designed so that those little epiphanies, that idea comes to you when you're not thinking about it. It's like this counterintuitive thing that happens. And I think that's true, right? A lot of times, sometimes it's just going out and getting your feet on the earth and feeling the energy and soaking up a little bit of sun or, listening to the birds sing. But in that moment, because you're focused on that more pleasant thing, your mind is actually back there working and solving the problem for you. And I know I found that happen. I just didn't know why it happened. Like I would be having a problem with something, get really frustrated and basically give up on it. Like I'm just not going to deal with this today. And then when I go off to do something else, I'm like, oh, that's the answer to that other problem. And I don't know why I couldn't, until I listened to that book, I didn't understand why I couldn't have just thought about that when I was thinking about it.
Mm.
But his whole point is a lot of times you can't think of the answer when you're thinking about the problem. So you have to go someplace else so your brain can think about the answer. I don't know if that makes sense,
It
right?
makes
But
sense. It makes sense.
yeah, so I do think getting out, even for 5, 10, 15 minutes, once a day, a couple times a day, I've gotten to where I know there's a bunch of research on it. But, big name doctors and stuff talk about it, but I have gotten to where almost every day I will get up. When I get up in the morning, I go like put myself in a position where I can get some sunlight for a few minutes, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, I think you got to do some of those things, David. Not
Yeah.
you. I'm not saying you, but like we as
But you
people
as
have to do
as
it. Yeah,
yeah, I get it.
yeah,
So, going into the website and your book, and obviously
yeah,
we're talking about your book as a whole, and I'm just trying to find it's about, your book, Overcoming Life's Toughest Setbacks. It's
yeah.
sharing the principles which will share the core beliefs, like I said at the end. Do you feel like the book is a key to helping others to help them understand when you do give the core beliefs, like we've spoken about a few of them today? Do you feel like it's a key to unlocking the true potential in people?
Man, that sounds, there's a part of me that says, wow, that's like a big statement, like can it help them? I think my experience has been it it will give you some ideas of ways that you can sustain yourself until you get to that place where you can make that turn, right?
Mm.
So, what was the phrase you just used?
A key to helping
No, like
people.
inspire people. No,
Yeah,
there's
to
a
help them inspire, be the better themselves.
yeah. I mean, I think it will help them. The all of them can be applied in different ways,
Mm.
like to the person. They kind of tune to the person. They're kind of big like meta statements, right? Like there's a lot of stuff underneath them. And so to me, I see and think in pictures. I'm
Yeah.
much more visual
It's
and
like
so
it's like the examples I'll give. You give about no one outruns the universe is a bold statement. Then you got the statement next to it, embrace humility and acceptance, knowing you are part of a larger plan. So you
yeah,
are making a bold statement, but you're giving the statement explanation of why you think passionate about that subject. So I said
yeah.
no one outruns the universe. I would say it and I would say in my deep voice, professional voice, I would say no one outruns the universe.
You're right. Yeah.
And then you go into the normal voice explaining, embrace So that's what I
Yeah.
mean. And you're going into a deep, passionate belief
Yes.
to out there, and then if people question, what do you mean, Andy? Is you're explaining in a subtle tone because you want them to be caught aware of no one outruns the universe, but then people are like, why? And you're like, because this is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, this is my like embrace humility and acceptance, knowing you're part of a larger plan. You know, uh, like I've probably looked at that phrase, no one outruns the universe, and it has applied to like 20 different meanings to me, like in
Mm,
different circumstances. It's like a reminder to me, you know, do not get arrogant and cocky because you're not going the universe is not designed for that. Okay.
no.
So like you're not going to outrun, you're not smarter than the universe is. You can attempt to understand the universe, but the universe doesn't have to spend a lot of time understanding you.
Mm,
Like the universe doesn't like just adjust, you know,
mm,
like to you. Like you have to kind of figure out and adjust to the principles that the universe kind of operates on. And so like in my case, just like one example was like I thought I had all this stuff from my past kind of sorted out. And so like to me, that's kind of like trying to outrun the universe because the universe eventually kind of cornered me and was like, yeah, you don't. Okay. So let's confront it, let's deal with it. And but other people look at it and see it in different terms. And I think that's very cool that they do because I didn't write these down for other people, right? What I did was I wrote them down as ways to remind myself of things that I had observed in ways that I'd gotten through circumstances. And so I just started writing them down.
mm,
And then some people had said, well, you should write a book about some of the things you've been through. And I didn't want to just relive the things I'd been through in a book. I want to, eventually I kind of said, well, I've got these 15 things that I've written down. Maybe if I shared those with people, that might make some of these things at least have some goodness come out of them, right? Other than just surviving them, because in a lot of ways, there's no goodness that comes out of losing a child to suicide, right? But
mm,
it's like, well, if you share them, then maybe a good thing that would come out of that would be maybe just one person will be thinking about taking their own life and they won't. So it doesn't make up for my loss, but I don't want somebody else to experience that. So that's when I decided it's like, well, I'll share these things. And in a lot of ways, look, the way I look at it, Dave, it's kind of like our conversation. I don't really have like a preset notion of the conversation. I have a belief that there is a higher power, that there is a creator, and that
mm,
in this universe, um, it will work out the way it was intended to work out. And so if you and I just talk about it, if I just put it down on paper, I don't really worry about like how our conversation, because we talked about like editing and all that. And I'm like, look, uh, if I screw it up, then it must have been that someone needed to hear it screwed up, and like that's kind of the way I look at it. It's kind of like I just expect that, um, you know, the way it's supposed to work will work. So that's kind of with these 15 core beliefs.
mm.
People can take them and apply them or not apply them, but if they help one person, if they just help one person, I know that kind of sounds trite, like a cliche, but when you've been through a bunch of stuff, either you become hardened and you don't care about people or things because of what you've been through, or you become somebody who just really doesn't want to see somebody else have to go through that. You
Yeah.
know, like I don't want to see I too many parents have to deal with one of my children sent me a message yesterday about friends of theirs in their neighborhood got a message thanking whoever called the police when they heard the gunshot that took their son's life because he took his own life. There's too many parents, too many people are leaving this earth too soon, and too many parents of those people are dealing with that loss. And so if somebody will read this and just one person will not leave too soon and one set of parents and one family don't have to deal with that loss, then it's worth sharing it.
Yeah. And it's just making that, yeah, it's a very powerful way of putting it. And people obviously can get the book on Amazon, any other places.
Oh, it's on Amazon. And you can just search, you can do a search on my name, Andy Campbell, and I think it's the first thing that pops up.
And it will be in the description. I'll make sure the Amazon link is in the description afterwards.
Yeah.
And there's also a practical guide that you've got about overcoming life's toughest setbacks, 15 break when it talks about your core beliefs, and I'll make sure that link's in the description as well.
Yeah, thank you. And if anybody's going through, they or a loved one or someone they know is going through their journey as cancer, I've got a website that I'm not a doctor and I don't propose that they do what I've done, but if you're looking at a more integrative approach to dealing with cancer and you want some ideas of what somebody else has done, then you can go check out my website, askandycampbell.com, and kind of look through what I've done. Again, I'm not suggesting you do it, but it's if you're looking for ideas of how to have a more integrative approach to your treatment plan, then feel free to go there and look.
And the way I always look at it, when we do discuss things, if it's with Andy, with any guest I have, we are just purely informing. And if we are a trained professional, we will make it aware. But me and Andy, like we said, we are not trained professionals. We're just here to inspire you, to make you understand. And, we give the advice to help support you in your journey.
Exactly. Exactly. My grandfather used to tell me that experience is what you get just after you needed it. And so I think you and I are just, sharing our experiences, right? It's like, so
Exactly.
if that
And
helps somebody, then that's great.
I agree with that. And the last ultimate question I always like to end on is people often go on a journey, whether it's a straightforward journey, which 9 times out of 10 is never straightforward, hence why it's called the journey. Sometimes people branch off for gas, toilet breaks, whatever, or even diversions. But people still like to be inspired to help them move on their journey. What would you say to them to help them feel good in their journey?
I would say um, it is your journey, and it doesn't matter what anybody else has done or not done, or how far they may seem ahead of you, or you may have been through something and somebody else seems to have handled it better than you did. Whatever circumstance you're in, no one else matters. You matter. Okay. You may not feel like you matter, but you matter. In my belief system, there's a creator and that creator cares about you. You matter to the universe. And even if you don't have that same belief system, I still believe you are a thread in the fabric of the universe and you matter. Like the universe would not be the same without you. So what I would say to someone going on their journey is it is your journey. Life itself is a journey, and you may look at it as, oh, I can't recover from this. I made these bad decisions or these bad things happen to me. That's not true. You're worth the effort. And the only person you should compete with in your journey is you. Because every time you took that little detour, that's an experience. That experience is what you get just after you need it. And nobody else has that experience, or maybe they don't have the same exact experience. Your journey is unique, and you shouldn't compare yourself to anybody else. Okay. Just do your journey, do the best you can, don't quit, be insatiably curious about your own improvement, just your improvement, right? Don't let yourself get stuck. Because one thing about a journey is like you got to keep moving. It's not much of a journey if you don't keep moving. It's just like, well, now I'm just here,
Yeah.
and sometimes you do, like you stop for a little bit and you catch your breath and you need a rest, but continue on your journey because you're important and you matter. You matter.
And that's all that matters is you matter. And on
You
that,
do matter.
I'd like to say, Andy, thank you for sharing your journey with us today.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, David.
Thank you.
No one outruns the universe. Embrace humility and acceptance, knowing you are part of a larger plan. There are no hard decisions, only hard consequences. Follow your heart and face the consequences with courage. Always fall forward. Keep moving toward your goals, even when you fall. Have an insatiable curiosity, let your desire to find wisdom guide you through life. Compete only with yourself, measure success by your own progress, not by comparing yourself to others. Thinking versus knowing, distinguish between assumptions and knowledge. Every challenge has a chewy nugget center made of opportunity, persevere to find the hidden lessons in every struggle. Never be waiting, always find work to do and remain proactive. Never try, always work, commit to action and avoid complacency. The 38th special rule, hold on loosely, but don't let go, balance control and freedom to foster innovation and growth. Be religious only about religion, apply flexibility and open-mindedness to all but your core faith. Equations are constant, variables are constantly changing, adapt your strategies to meet evolving circumstances. History doesn't repeat itself. Humans repeat history, learn from the past to avoid repeating mistakes. The necessity of perseverance, embrace resilience as the foundation of all other beliefs. Finishing, commit to completing what you start as the ultimate testament to perseverance.
Our thanks to our guest there for a wonderful journey. And now a couple of messages to share with you.
Hello, I am Amy Harrison. I'm the author of the book Feline Warrior Part 1 and Part 2, a fictional story that is written in a poetic format that is based on real-life events that could happen to anyone and intended only for relatable purposes. This story claws into Catgirl's past abuse. Catgirl is human and part feline, but truly a warrior who can handle anything because she is strong and fierce. She has been taken advantage of for far too long. Join her on her journey as she reaches freedom. Here are some poems from Feline Warrior. Tears flow. I no longer know what to do. I am no longer who I once was, and it is because I made a choice to use my voice. And that is okay, because what I had to say was true, unlike me and you. Now I see, I am free, I am me, I am Catgirl. Ultimately, be you, always stay true. Do what you want to do, because every day is made new. If you want to read more, visit the link in the description. Meow at you later!
Music by Erica R. from Pixar Bay.
By Tim Parsons. The narrator is Kate Barton. Director and producer, Darren Street. Tim Parsons would like to thank family and friends for their support with the paramedic Chris venture. The series is dedicated to the memory of his father, Reverend David Parsons. Copyright Tim Parsons 2020, all rights reserved. Unauthorized use, copying or sharing of this audiobook is strictly prohibited. This has been a Voice Reel studio production for Tim Parsons.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I've just been listening to the Paramedic Chris children's books on audio again, and I just love it because they've given a tribute in one of them to my dad as well, who passed away a few years ago. I love audio books, and it's great to walk around, and it's great to sit at the computer, if you're out jogging or wherever, to listen to them as well. All 4 of the Paramedic Chris children's books are available on audio book from Amazon. Go and take a listen to them. You won't be disappointed. You'll hear what happens when a community pulls together and supports one another. The best thing is to pop over to my website, paramedicchriskidsbooks.org, and you'll see the links on the shop page. Keep safe, everyone, and thank you for being you.
The Journey podcast explores stories of personal growth, challenges, and life-changing moments. Each episode dives into unique experiences, offering insights and inspiration for listeners navigating their own paths. I believe everyone has a story worth sharing. If you'd like to share your journey with David and others, email your story to wisewords1983@reborn.com, and it may be featured in a future episode.